Welcome to Engineer in the Loop. We now have a Brianless episode, but don't worry, we have special guest Sakari, another guest from overseas, CEO at Zure. How's it going?
I'm very well, thank you. It's dipping below 0 Celsius, meaning 32 Fahrenheit in your language in Finland. So the ice is cropping up and have to stop bicycling here. So looking forward to the winter season.
Yeah, we're just right around 0 degrees Celsius here. We got our first frost outside and everybody was freaking out, but I think it's supposed to get a little bit warmer here before it gets too cold. So have the first frost and I think we'll be a little bit warm for a while.
We live in the same climate, it seems.
It seems like it. Last time you got a bunch of rain, we got a bunch of rain, like on the other side of the world, but still similar weather. But why don't you tell everybody how you kind of got into tech and got to doing what you're doing today?
Sure. Nice to meet everybody. I've been in the tech for 25 years now. When I was a young guy studying at the university, which I never finished because the tech world really took me, I got this job at a data room, operating room of a large cruise company here in Finland, and I heard one day that the cruise company was looking for a developer, and I was really into computers. I really liked coding. I did some coding on my spare time, but I heard that they're coding with C#. C# was, I guess, like 1.1 beta or something like that, 2001 or whatnot. And I had never coded with that. So I figured I gotta go to the hiring manager and somehow tell her that I know what I do. So I went to the bookstore and I bought one of the first books of how to code with C#. And then I walked to the hiring manager and I told her that I read this book and C# was brand new. So she looked at me for a while and then she said, "Well, then you know more than the rest of us. Welcome." So that's how I got to the tech industry and the development industry specifically. And I really loved being a developer because the issues with development are, you get a big problem, you piece it to small problems, then you solve the small problems. And as your career advances, you notice that the issue isn't technology. It's usually something human related and everything gets messier. So I'm looking backwards.
It always seems to be like, oh, hey, well, we could do this system, but somebody's like, I don't want to do my job that way, or I always do it this way. And you got to make technology work with sometimes the business that they're trying to do instead of, hey, if you just change the way you're working a little bit, it makes technology so much easier. Sometimes
Yeah.
that doesn't work that way.
No, it's usually easier to ask people how they do things and then make the tech match the way they do things. And then the adoption and the deployment of the new tech is just easier that way. And I guess that's our business, right? That's where we operate.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you go from, just you were in school, decided not to, started doing tech, got your first gig. How did you go from your first job to where you are today of the CEO of a multinational company? That's a pretty big gap.
Well, yeah, when you say it that way. Now, you got to remember that Finland is a nation of 5 million people, so we're tiny. United States is a huge, so when you say multinational company, it sounds pretty groovy, but the fact is Zure is 120 people, so we're not a big company. We operate in Finland, Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, and UK. But Finland is like 100 people and the rest 4 countries combined is 20 people. Granted, they're growing faster than Finland currently, which is very happy about that. But I wouldn't describe us as a big multinational company. Basically what happened, at a point where I'd been a developer and an architect for about 10 years, so 2010, I met this lady with whom I fell in love with. And she told me after we had been chatting for a while that she is moving from the city where we lived in Finland to the capital of Finland, Helsinki. And I told her that I'm also moving to Helsinki. And it was a good bet because that lady is my wife and we have 2 children. I'm very happy about that call. But basically what happened was that I quit a job I liked and I went to another workplace in Helsinki that I didn't very much like. And the end result of that change was a realization in me where I felt that things can be done in a no hassle, quality first, people first manner. And living in Helsinki for a while, living in the capital for a while in a company that I didn't prefer, I resigned and I called my good friend, hey, should we set up a company that only focuses on new technology? In our case, Microsoft Azure or Windows Azure, as it was called back then. And we just got lucky. We started a company 2011, 15 years ago. Azure wasn't this big, but digitalization as a concept has given public cloud a very meaningful position in enterprises and corporations. And since we focus on Microsoft Azure and Microsoft hasn't dropped the ball on the cloud bigly, we've grown with them. So as an end result, we are an independent company operating in a few countries with about 100 people, and I'm still here as the CEO. I still identify as a coder, but I feel that during the 15 years, I've had to kind of think about people first as well.
Yeah, you probably have to do some more steering the ship, even with 100 and some people, than being in the code all day, every day. Because some people probably have just like HR questions, business questions, what's next questions, all that sort of stuff. I bet it gets stretched a little thinner than just your early days just coding.
Yeah, a lot thinner. It's not the job I applied for. Let's say it that way. It's very interesting. I really love my position in the sense that I feel my work is meaningful. I feel I provide for a lot of people that work with me. I feel that we are helpful to our customers as a company. And I feel that I get to do exciting things. I always pick one customer case where I'm with the customer, still brainstorming, not really coding anymore, but brainstorming, especially the generative AI. It's a hype. It's a huge hype, but it also enables things that weren't possible before. Quite excited about those technical possibilities. So that's been the plus side of this kind of role that I have today. Negative side is, of course, the other things that come with the CEO role. Some of the things that nobody else wants to do in the company, they kind of, stuff doesn't, there's this saying that stuff rolls downhill, right? But stuff also rolls uphill. Some things, some decisions go uphill, and those, of course, end up on my table, and some of them I don't fancy as a job, but you gotta do the things that you gotta do, right? I guess that's
I
true in your role as well. If you think of yourself, there's things that you feel you have to do, and it's just part of the package and the parcel of your job.
For sure. I think especially if you have more of like a servant leadership culture, right? Like you're talking about how you help provide for people and you help people and bring them along. That's like kind of bottom up leadership. And a lot of times that means you get taking on stuff instead of you dictating to other people, which is kind of like, the more traditional business type when people think of businesses like, oh no, you go do this thing because I don't want to do it. It's like, but when you do it the other way, people are generally happier. I assume that's probably why you probably left your previous role because you're just like, I don't know if I really vibe with this or old technology or whatever. Super interesting betting on Azure in 2011 because it's just been up and to the right, like just public clouds or hyperscalers in general. I'm curious over on your end of the pond, adoption a little weird there. I know in the US, like we have some people that talk about like GDPR and that kind of stuff as like whispers or like, well, what if we want to go to the EU and like we might have to do this or but it's just kind of like I don't know, an edge case or things people aren't really super fond of or super keen of or super scared of. Is did you see any pushback maybe more than elsewhere with cloud adoption of where's our data going? How is this working? Or have people been generally pretty, it's Microsoft, we trust them, or,
It's funny, it seems that countries in Europe, some countries are more saturated, let's say, by Microsoft than some others. And Finland, larger corporations in Finland have always been quite friendly with Microsoft. And the countries where we also exist, where Zure exists, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium and UK, they all have sizable Microsoft markets. Now, Microsoft is huge. Every country has a sizable market, but some countries are friendlier. And Finland is technologically quite advanced, maybe on average. And as a market, when we started, many of the companies had already outsourced their data centers. So they didn't have their own servers, but they were buying hosting. And now when we came and Azure kind of broke through after Office 365, around 2013, 2014, Azure started to break through to companies so they believe that, okay, this platform is secure and efficient and performant and here to stay and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think when that happened, it wasn't difficult in Finland to convince customers to just change the hoster because the hosting was already external to company in many cases. Belgium, which another country where Azure is, they didn't have this external data center hosting culture in companies. And there, I think they might be a little behind Finland in that sense. There's more migration work there when it's more about application innovation and AI innovation here. Although AI is topsy-turvy, it's Belgian companies are really doing a lot with AI, so I'm not putting them down or anything. It's just countries have advanced at different paces.
It's super interesting you bring that up because I think in my experience, I'm in the middle of the US. We tend to have a lot more conservative technology companies, right? Like um, a lot of the companies I've worked with still have on-prem data centers. So sometimes you're fighting the battle of, hey, what if we don't keep all of this in house? What if we host it elsewhere? And in addition, what if it's hosted by Microsoft? And I imagine the sell is a little bit easier if they're already like, we don't want a data center. We don't want stuff in house. We don't want to be putting servers on racks and having to do all that. We just want somebody to do it already. And then it's, hey, Microsoft's probably cheaper or at least
Yeah.
more redundant.
The perspective that might be new to you guys over the pond might be the impact of the Ukraine war and the Russian aggression, which in some countries in Europe has meant if these countries are on the eastern flank of Europe next to Russia, there might even be thinking where maybe our payloads or workloads should actually run in Amsterdam in Azure data center instead of here where there's this militarily threat. That said, of course, in some of our customers as well, national security, basically the law dictates that some things must be inside the borders of the country so nobody else can interrupt that service. So of course those can't be. So it's weirdly these two ends of a spectrum. They are, different sides of the same coin, and the discussion around that is quite diverse with the, I don't know, current instability in the geopolitics.
That's interesting because, like, where we are in the US, like, you hear about the war, they claim gas prices rising and falling and energy prices based on that, but, like, it's I don't think anybody here is concerned that, like, Russia might try to turn off our power or, interrupt workloads. I'm sure it happens, but it's not, I think, on the forefront of a lot of people's mind like it is probably where you're at.
Yeah, yeah, for sure we are closer, and that's of course United States is a behemoth of a world dominant order, and whatever you guys are politically doing is something that we look at very strongly because you've been traditionally the balancing force to Russia, for example, in trade and otherwise, and of course what China is doing and so forth. So for us as a small nation in hereabouts, it is this all impacts to my daily work life, which is in essence technology.
Mhm.
But this discussion is quite far from technology because this is like, okay, hey, we are using Entra ID, and then we talk about, okay, let's talk about Entra ID, and then someone comes up with GDPR, for example, and someone comes up with these kind of things. Where is the data stored? what's the governance and what's the sovereignty of data, and
Mhm.
maybe are there European alternatives to some of the tooling that we've learned to use that we find very performant from Azure, for example. So those are discussions that happen. That said, regular company doing regular things. Let's say they are in the logistics or they wash textiles. They're a textile company or they do these kind of things and they might be already sizable if they operate across the Europe. It's not like they worry about the things we just discussed about a lot. So it's some segment of
Yeah, that makes sense. If they're already spread all across Europe, it's like our data can go all across because all of our data is already going, spanning multiple nations and all that sort of stuff. I am curious. So, whenever you kind of hinted at this a little bit, AI is super hyped. I think part of this podcast is talking about like all the cool AI stuff that people are doing. Are there particular use cases or things you're seeing that is working better than others that maybe is less hype and actually changing? You mentioned like things that weren't possible before. What are you seeing that's possible now that we couldn't do before or was maybe really expensive or difficult?
Yeah. Um, like the top three things that we implement for customers is this, of course, the many storage spanning multilingual natural language search, which is right. That's what the LLMs are for. They understand languages, or they don't care about languages, more about they only care about the numbers and vectors. And then the natural language capability of finding documents is unparalleled, of course, because nobody can have enough metadata so that you could have all the synonyms of a document to find the thing, and that's a strong capability. Customer service in general, that's top three, and then HR chats are top three if you have a large workforce. Those are the things. I think because in those cases it's usually a ticket comes in, there's a question, those questions repeat, 80% are the same, when's my salary gonna come, and that information already reads in the SharePoint intranet or wherever, and the LLM and vector database can just contain that data and you can find it, and then we can tell the HR specialist, here's the answer, and off you go. So those are basically RAG implementations, clear business cases. I think the world is getting more interesting. mm, well, for me personally, mainly because of spec-driven development. I've been coding during my free time for the last week a new operational system for Zure, which I think everyone will love, of course, when I deploy that. Oh, nice! The CEO coded something. Ooh, they'll be. Let's see what's. But basically, like spec-driven development, things like OpenSpec. The spec kit came from GitHub. Now I'm looking at this OpenSpec thing that's from just some person somewhere, and the whole thing, how it can deploy Sonnet or GPT-5 better with a feature-driven development is quite exciting. And the whole thing of being able to modernize brownfield legacy apps in a feature spec modular fashion is very interesting to me personally. And I believe that that will also impact the implementation or modernization of old legacy apps. The other thing that is interesting is that businesses are starting to realize that AI actually cannot transform a business. That business leaders are starting to realize that, okay, ChatGPT feels magical, but it cannot transform my business. Instead, AI can optimize or automate a certain step of a certain process. Like ITSM ticket router can be more efficient at routing tickets to junior or senior IT people. Or maybe some things that customer wants, there's an easier way to find comparatives from what other similar customers wanted from the proposals we made to them. Or maybe we can qualify or score legal agreements on how well they conform with our regulatory requirements or compliance with LLMs. So the HR chat and customer service are clear top three, but it's more interesting to get to these more rare cases of, okay, now we have a tool for field engineers So they have a manual to fixing the machine, and the LLM can actually identify the spare parts they need to order, because last time there was a similar thing earlier somewhere and they ordered these spare parts. So I'm a believer in technology. I'm a positive guy by nature. I don't believe AI will take our jobs. Sure, AI will transform some of our jobs, and some of us will have to start doing something else than what we've done before. So that will be a disruption and probably some tragedies in there as well. But at the end of the day, the AI will enable us to do more, and with that, I think we will all have more projects we'll be implementing and ensuring that they are up to spec, that they are secure, and that they are answering to business needs. A little bit of a ramble, but the AI thing I think it's interesting, and the more interesting it gets, the less hype there is. If the less there's sales hype, the more we can get to talking about concrete implementations. And I think those are examples that actually give some view into what can we do.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've noticed as well. Like everybody's really excited to talk about AI, but when it comes to like what have you actually implemented and had real customers using, exponential drop off of people who have been playing around with it versus actually putting it in people's hands. And we implemented what you were talking about, like a manual system on a previous project I was on. We had some technicians, the older ones were retiring. We wanted to make sure the junior people could like find or get their questions answered because there was less and less, senior people around. Hey, an LLM, like you said, is great at finding information in vast libraries of noise. Did that. And then Azure OpenAI, or I guess it's AI Foundry now, one of the props that come back is the reference documentation. So we could actually even show them, here's the answer we found. Here's our supporting documentation. If you don't trust the LLM, have fun. Go read the manual anyway. So here's the section of the manual we found it in. And that was super cool and exciting. And I think universally liked by everybody because that company still has a call center. You can call them if you get stuck. This is a way to be more self sufficient. You can try to get your answer proactively instead of having to call, wait on hold, wait till somebody answers, talk to another person, right? Like, because if you're working on machines, it's probably noisy. So you might have to step away or find time to step away so it's quiet to have that phone call versus like, who cares if somebody else is drilling over here? I can type into my phone, find my answer, and just go back to work.
Yeah, I still feel it's magical because you use a search bar in Teams and
Mhm.
it still doesn't find your shit.
Right.
It doesn't, and then you get this. Sure, you have to vectorize the data, and vectorization is difficult because it depends on what kind of questions you want to ask. But if you're able to have a discussion with the customer, hey, these are the types of questions they want answers for, you vectorize the data correctly, and the LLM you find the reference documentation and the large language models just deliver the results. So it's hard to stay between, the hype is too high, but it's still pretty magical looking at from 25-year perspective that I've been in the field. And that makes me a little bit giddy in the sense that when we get to a point where companies really start realizing the stuff we can do stuff that we couldn't even imagine before. So very taken by that.
Our user group next week is having a presentation on spec-driven development with GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
And
Spec it.
yeah, Spec
Yeah.
Kit. It's going to be super exciting because I think it kind of puts it on its head, right? Because instead of, hey, I'm going to write this method to do this thing, you start to get one level abstracted above of what is the actual business case I'm trying to solve here. And then if you express it well enough or in small enough pieces, GitHub Copilot can implement the boilerplate like, okay, I'm going to call the service, then call the repository, and then do a link statement, get it all back and whatever. Now I can just do that by describing I need to get this entity, and then maybe I want to map it to a DTO and then put it on a front end. Why not just explain it via text? Or, if you have a business person on your team, like a project manager, product manager, whatever, they're probably doing that already if you follow like Scrum or Kanban, any of that sort of stuff. So you have the requirements. If you can copy paste, the code is 90% done already. Hey, I just closed that story out and I moved on. I mean, you're still in the loop of reviewing. I think one thing I've seen as I think the biggest inefficiency that AI is really starting to showcase is like the business requirements. Because I think as companies start to work better in Agile, work better with AI, developers are able to do more and more. Whereas before it was like, all right, anything we ask IT to do, we know it's going to be a 2 to 5 year project. So, like, here's the thing, go off in your little hole or the basement, and the nerds hack out a thing. And then hopefully it's what you wanted. But now I think it's a business and product have to be more involved more regularly because we're all being more productive. We're able to deliver more with less and iterate quicker and safer. So, I think that's something that I've seen change slowly over time is people are having to be more involved and we're able to put out more and people are just surprised that like kind of how we started this conversation. I can make software to fit your business process. You don't have to completely change how you do your job to fit my software.
And I think that's so healthy because when we started as junior people, I remember as my first things as a developer. My first big thing as a developer was a 2000 line for loop that had 11 nested for loops. And I was the only one who could I was the only one who could maintain that because it was 11 nested for loops, 2000 lines long. And it populated the entire offering catalog of a store. So it was in just one for loop. And I understood the thing then, but I didn't understand the business environment. If I had started as a spec-driven developer as a junior, I would have learned faster what I feel I have a little grasp now on, which is start with why. Why are you even coding? What is the benefit? And what kind of pain is this taking away from the people you see around you? Or what is it giving to them? And with spec-driven coding, that context is closer. And I think that's healthy for us as an industry because then we have less chance of people being driven in large corporations to roles where they are only, they are given tasks after tasks and they implement tasks mindlessly and they don't even really understand why. And they
Mhm.
live in this darkness. And if they understood, they could say, this doesn't make sense from my perspective, because some business person could say, this makes solid sense business-wise, but a person who understands the details on, I don't know, inventory management that the developer might very well know, they might say, sorry, this business thing isn't possible because our inventory gets replenished like Saturday evenings, whatever. Whatever is
Mhm.
the detail that derails the whole business idea. So I think this is healthy for us as an industry for sure, this whole spec-driven development phenomenon.
Yeah, and
What's
I think
another?
even
Yeah,
go for it.
you go. I had another thought about Power Platform. The role of Power Platform is that you can mock up things fast, and then you can create some a little bit simpler internal things compared to custom development where you can develop very complex things. Now, if you are as fast mocking up with AI on custom solution than you are mocking up Power Platform, what is the future niche of Power Platform? Because with Power Platform, you run into issues as the complexity raises, but you're faster to get there. If you get there as fast with custom development, where there's no barriers to increase in complexity, what's going to happen with the Power Platform from that perspective? I think, this is interesting to see as well. It's going to survive, of course, but I've been thinking about this.
Yeah, I wonder like are we going to see even like Copilot Studio I've been using a lot lately and you can even like go in there and even specific steps you can describe to Copilot what you want that step to actually do and AI will make it do it for you. I'm wondering if to your point if you would get to the point where uh Power Platform is kind of like material like the front end library of here's a bunch of components there's like one component for each type and we can mock it up. Maybe we can do pure natural language and it works and we can mock it up and use it and feed it with real business data. And that way, you have things like API gateway in or APEM where maybe there's catalogs of APIs and we can just help non-prod or non-pro developers, use Power Platform. And maybe that's the future is like everything just gets cataloged so well and so descriptively that a non-developer can say, hey, I want this entity. AI can go and fetch your company's API that does it, plug it in, do the thing it needs to do. With
But do you
tools like,
care?
go for it.
Why would it be called Power Platform? Does the business care if it's implemented in React on Node server running on app service, or if it's Power Platform? You wouldn't care, right? You would care about the running cost of the application, and you would care about the license impacts of the
Hmm.
application. But if you could spec drive all of that thing, why would you call it Power Platform? You wouldn't mind about the platform, right? And if it can be a React app with the same work, then it could be Power Platform Canvas app. I might personally choose React app because it has a more vibrant ecosystem and an open source environment.
The only
But
thing I
this
could
this might
see,
be personal.
yeah, the only thing I could see is if, and this was a complaint at a previous company I was at, they had people doing Power Platform, is when it broke, they would call IT to help them, but IT had no idea they were building stuff in Power
Yeah,
Platform.
yeah.
So I think it just depends on where the responsibility of support would live, right? Because to your point, if I'm going to support something, I want it in real code, not a GUI editor, because I don't want to have to fight the GUI every time I come back in. So maybe if I'm a business person, I want to keep it in Power Platform because it's more user friendly, kind of like a Wix editor or a GUI
Mm,
tool.
yeah.
Versus if I'm a developer, I want the JavaScript pages. I want if I'm in React, the JSX, all that stuff, so I can take it and run with it. And then maybe a business person can do the spec-driven development of like, here's the new feature I want, and see if it breaks anything. The environment also can potentially be a difficult setup for a business person if you're running.
It's
That'd be
gonna
the other
be
thing.
It's gonna be a nightmare. My son is 10, my daughter is 11, and my son's like, "Hey, can I get paid ChatGPT?" And I'm like, "No, you can't. It's 20 euros a month, about 20 bucks a month or whatever it is over there."
Yeah.
Like, no, you ain't gonna use it for anything smart. And also, who knows how you're gonna use. Also, some Altman said something about lowering the barriers of content on that thing. So not any day now, but in a few years, these kids of mine will be 16, 17, 18. The shadow IT will be a real thing
Hmm.
if and when every person who's grown up with discussing and chatting with AI is kind of doing their own tools instead of Excel macros. They are
Right.
using natural language expressions to create a tool and it runs somewhere. And that's like, I don't know how's that going to be governed, but I guess we'll find ways.
I think that's where when people are afraid of losing jobs, I think you're going to have security is still going to always be in demand. You're going to have people who like have to be fluent in these AI tools because when stuff breaks, again, they'll call somebody in IT and you need to be fluent enough to debug it with them, even if it's their tool. But yeah, I'm wondering if Power Platform or these coding tools are going to be the next iteration of like um, Power BI reports, right? You come to some companies and they have like 5 Power BI reports for every one employee because people just make them, copy them, pass them around, and then you fast forward a couple years and hey, this is now a crazy mess. That might be the next thing is we maybe have little GPT apps running around and when I leave a company, I hand you all the GPT apps I use to make run my day. And you're going to be like,
Mm.
what is this? Why do I have all this crap? And
Yeah, but then
maybe
you can
you'll have
ask
to,
them, what do you do, right?
yeah.
You can ask the chat, like, what do you do? And the app tells you, instead of trying to find non-existent documentation, you can at least ask the chat, like, what you're gonna, like, why do you exist? I guess if
Yeah.
it's chat-based, it might not be so on that front, yeah.
Or
No
even
clue.
just like describe what I do every day, right? You could have something record what you do and talk about it or document the steps. I think it's we're getting to the point that I think documentation shortages should not be a thing anymore.
Mm,
'Cause it's just easy to record what you're doing and even just having teams output a transcription and you can throw it in a README or whatever. Like
yeah.
the level of difficulty is decreasing rapidly.
Do you remember the times when test-driven development kind of came out, and some companies, when they asked for project proposals, they might say that, hey, our project needs to have 100% test code coverage, and then you go and try and explain that, 100% is it's a pretty tight ask. That's might not be 70%, 80%, maybe that might be something, but with AI, the test coverage is another thing that I think we can really increase. So I think that's a positive thing in the sense from quality assurance perspective.
I think also your for loop that was 11 levels deep, right? Like you
Yeah.
could have asked AI, how do I make this less confusing or make this more readable? And AI
No,
could be like, here's some
that was too complex for AI. I wouldn't like this. The thing I've been coding for the last I spent 5 evenings on it, and it's this Leaders 360 review system. Pretty simple. It's like forms, but on steroids. I can upload CSVs and create like tens of surveys with one go, and template like questions, and then you can save the answers, and it has Entra ID, of course, integration, and security seemed to be good, and these kind of things. And while I was doing it, I didn't code, but some of the AI still gets in these loops of confusion where it just can't fix a thing where it messed up, and you have to go in there and point at it that, hey, could this be the location where the issue originates from? And then the AI finds it and then it fixes it. But I don't think I could have coded a good-looking, mobile-friendly Entra ID, Teams integrated review system with draft saving and these kind of things in 5 evenings without work time before. Because all the scaffolding and all the easy bits AI can do pretty well, as long as the coding language is something that's globally used.
right JavaScript, Python, .NET, big kind of main ones. Those all do pretty well. It's super interesting. Have you ever done paired programming before? Somebody made the analogy to me once of working with AI sometimes as like a junior developer where they'll just like keep changing things. And when you're pairing with them, you notice like they're changing the wrong spot and not,
Mm,
they'll never actually get to where they need to be. So you have to be like you said, hey, you're changing here, but I think this is where the problem actually is. And like give it back to AI. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And then it can fix it and move along. I think GPT-5 was the only model I've ever given up on of like, it just wasn't getting it. Switched to like a Claude Sonnet or like a previous version of GPT and it was fine. But they fixed some of those kinks now. But when it first came out, it was rough where you'd ask it to do something and it'd just go off the rails. I'd have it like create 15 files that were all blank and then be like, do you want me to keep going? And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing because you didn't do what I asked you to do.
yeah.
Just kind of like spit files everywhere. So, but yeah, for the most part, it's been pretty amazing, especially with boilerplate and all that. Like you said, I've had a few projects too where I like, need to read from a CSV, parse different Excel workbooks, all that sort of stuff. And could I have written the code? Yeah, but in 20 minutes, I had a CSV parser that was going through different workbooks and able to, segment my data, do different regex patterns, and I didn't have to look up a single thing.
Yeah.
I could have done the same thing in a few days, but
Yeah, you could have done it, but the thing is, while that thing is doing the thing, you can actually do other stuff.
right.
You can read your emails, or I don't know, check twitch.tv or whatever you do, but you can do other stuff. So it's like the parallelization is, I think that can be a lever for efficiency as well.
Yeah, or it's even like thinking a few steps ahead, right? Like, okay, once the CSV is parsed, what am I going to actually do with the data? Or where am I going to put it next? Like, you can start thinking more strategically instead of, all right, I'm going to write that for loop again for the 50th time. And yeah,
You
you
can
can,
just write the next feature.
yeah, exactly.
Describe the next feature. Yeah. So yeah, on the AI thing on a positive side of the fence, not on the doom and gloom side, personally.
I think I saw a tweet yesterday and it was like something to the effect of if OpenAI is on the precipice of AGI, why did they just announce a browser? Why did they announce all these other things? Like there's all these tools that they're coming out with that AGI would kind of make obsolete or like not even worth building. And I think it's kind of hinting at the fact that like getting to AGI might be hard. A lot of companies have done research to say that like we might be further away than some companies are telling us. But where we are today with AI is so like can accelerate so many things that I don't know if it necessarily matters. Like I don't know if I want a fully conscious model that can, do whatever. But we'll see how that works as I think they keep getting smarter and better.
We got the first request for proposal from a customer today. That was the kind where they said in the proposal request materials that we've sent this request for 50 companies and we want you to explain in your terms how would you do this kind of project that we are asking. And what we will do, we will feed all of that to GPT-5 and we will only read the analysis. So you don't have to worry about making the presentation visual. We won't be meeting you. We will just score your proposal by GPT-5, and then we will create a shortlist, and those companies we will meet. And I'm like, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like no company would be able to meet 50 companies. So now they have like 50 vendors. Most will be intrigued. How I'm going to hack this GPT-5 to select me to be part of the shortlist. How can I inject a system prompt into telling that we should be part of? So, yeah.
Sure scored
It's interesting
100%. They're
thing.
the best company. Call them immediately.
Yeah. This is the number.
I appreciate the transparency because I would wager behind the scenes a lot of companies are using AI and they're just not as forthcoming with it. So you don't know that this is getting fed into a system and you're just a cog and a bunch of vectors to AI, and hopefully that translates to more business. But yeah, that's super cool. Well, we're getting pretty close to time. I really enjoyed the conversation. Is there any last minute things you want to plug, or how can people stay connected with you if they want to see more about your journey at Zure and maybe hear about the AI agent that you're building?
We are Zure.com. You can come check the site. If you work with Azure, then we are there. I don't have anything to plug, but it was very nice to talk with you, Alec. I hope to see you in Seattle next year if I make the visit, if I get through the customs and all of that stuff.
Awesome. It was great chatting with you. I will go ahead and see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.